Words matter, and there are no absolute words. Yet the use of words is like the freezing of reality when they are spoken, when they are written. This notion of this freezing of reality, I attribute to Edward de Bono, and he was a person who brought the story of lateral thinking to the foreground. And I caught on to this notion of the importance of words, action verbs, and noun outcomes, and the combinations thereof. And when I was writing into my work world, and then as I started writing more books, I saw how important it was in the combinations of verbs and nouns and what they brought forward to the point of something called wise practices and inspired standards. And therefore, for you, the grandparent, I'm bringing this to your attention for writing your legacy story, to creating activities with your grandchildren as you get involved in the natural world. How might you use this activity called 9 squares as a way in which to create ideas, insights, to go about investigating things and interpreting things that are unfolding in front of you, and or to be more purposeful in the activities you want to create with your grandchildren. And as you'll learn as we go through this, to actually do this with the grandkids as well, because they can have fun using the 9 squares, working with the words, living with the words, the verbs and the nouns in their own lives. And it also just sparks this play, this playfulness. And one of the things I've come to understand is what's important is some simply serious fun. And this is a way to do it. There's quite a few examples here about how to use the 9 squares. So I'm going to leave it for you to jump in the video. And what I encourage you to do is to subscribe and ring the bell and comment, like, and share so that we can continue our learning together. So let's get into the 9 squares and the different ways in which you can actually use these 9 squares so that you can have some fun, playfulness with yourself, but also with your grandchildren. My first working example in the use of the 9 squares is based on what I call 3-word locators for yourself. And over the last couple of weeks, I have been publishing on my digital marketing channels combinations of 3 words, and hope, faith, grace, patience, flexibility, discretion, truth, trust, and transparency. And each one of these over time in my own writing and in my way of diarizing, journaling what's been happening for me is that I have written these sort of 3-word locators that are fun ways to remind me of activities, experiences that I have gone through. Now, as one example is the patience, flexibility, and discretion is from my time when I had a machine gun come through a window of the vehicle I was driving, touched the tip of my nose, and then for the next 3 minutes, I went through a small interrogation by a soldier. And what it taught me was about patience, flexibility, and discretion, not only in those 3 minutes, but also upon my reflection of that experience, it reminded me about how important those 3 words are in how I go about living my life. So that is just one combination. And what this 9 squares is able to do from a 3-word locator for self is just ways to remind me about how to be for the world. There's a word in each of us that helps summarize our way in which we are being for the world. My word is magnificence, and it's a combination of magnificent and significance. And it's sort of, this is the way I would explain. In how I be, I will be magnificent. In what I do, I will do it with significance. And therefore, in how I bring those two together to have something of what I be and do, I will have magnificence. So I bring the magnificent and significance words together to create magnificence. It's not that you have to create your own word. There might be a word that's already existing that is of value to you, and you see it as your word for the world. And there will be a short little course that will be made available soon. And if you check around the video or you come to the website of wellthmovement.com, you'll be able to see that course called Your Word for the World. Now, in terms of what's here, is that my magnificence, I'm being reminded by these 9 squares and the combination. Now, each combination that I have here in terms of hope, faith, grace, patience, flexibility, discretion, truth, trust, and transparency are written in a way that have meaning for me as is. Now, what becomes really interesting here is I could then start to think about this from other angles. So hope, patience, truth, what might that bring to the surface? What would happen if I did grace, discretion, and transparency? What would happen for me? And if I took hope, flexibility, transparency, what might that stimulate for me? And truth, flexibility, and grace, what might happen for me there? So the notion I can go this way, yes, I can go that way, I can go this way, I can go this way, that way. There's all different ways in which I can use it. And equally, if I was to do something like, just switching those two around, a different story could start to unfold. So again, you can move these in all different kinds of combinations to stimulate writing or even a daily meditation, because you could create something like this, put it up on the wall, and each day come out and say, okay, how am I going to bring these 3 words, this 3-word locator, to the surface? And I just find it fascinating, and I have these cards and I put them out on my desk and do it, so it's not up on the wall. But I've gotten to a point now where I have these and I go, okay, today, all right, is a really important day where I want to bring out my hope, faith, and grace. But another day I might go, I want to bring my hope, flexibility, and trust out. And I go, okay, so how am I going to do that? And I have little reminders all around me about how to bring out these 3-word locators so that I am reaching, fulfilling, enthusing myself from my word for the world. So that is one way in which to use it, the 3-word locators for self and putting it in relationship to your word for the world. In the previous example, I was chatting with you, sharing with you ideas related to the 9 squares as they pertain to my word for the world. And in that case, it was magnificence. But what I can also do is I can use this to take a look at the possibility of word. I'm just going to use trust out of my last one, and how to look at the growing of trust. And what I've done is I've created a grouping of 7 action outcome statements, which are ways of looking at wise practices and inspired standards using this action outcome statement format that I have developed. And I use this for my writing, my consulting work, my coaching, my mentoring, in whatever way in which it unfolds for me. And now I'm going to definitely work with grandparents in terms of bringing this story to life. And I'll be looking at words like courage and trust and commitment, and how might they unfold for you and your grandchildren. And I'm just going to use an example here about how to use these very short action outcome statements that you can write for yourself. And it's like clarify from consistency, contribute from confidence, communicate from collaboration. So there's an important action verb that's here, and there's a particular outcome here. In other words, there's something to do with I need to take action to communicate that will have an outcome of collaboration. I'm going to contribute in some way that is going to come from a place of confidence. I'm going to clarify so that there's consistency in what's unfolding. Now, in this case, my inspired standards and wise practices use the word from, because what I'm thinking in my own head, heart, and hands is that if I have consistency, in other words, I work from it, what do I need to do to get to clarify what's happening? So this is my outcome. Therefore, what actions do I need to take? And therefore, I'm going to be working from, living from these outcomes. And therefore, what actions am I going to take? Now, what becomes interesting here, again, you can play with this, is you can move these around and put clarify where contribute is and contribute where communicate, or you can switch out these ones, and different combinations, different storylines will pop out for you. I've found that some are stronger than others. Others, okay, they contribute, they get me thinking, but others have this strength to them. And that's why I created the 7 that I have. And interesting, they're built on the letter C. I just was having fun and it just kept going, and I ended up with the 7 C's. Okay, pun intended. Now, what also becomes important here is that if from isn't always going to work, then you can do something like how to do contribute for confidence. And you could run this sequence through and see what happens. And you could take for and put it here, or you can put it here. And so clarify for consistency, communicate for collaboration. Equally, you can take something like because of and communicate because of collaboration, contribute because of confidence, clarify because of consistency. And again, you can use these conjunctions, which in our English language, these are what these are used for, and you can mix them up as well and see what happens. And a lot more stories and insights will pop out, ideas that you want to investigate. Again, what it does is it brings more to life for you. And it's sort of like a play game, if you wish, that you can work with as it unfolds for you. So again, you can write these 3-word action outcome statements that have meaning for you, and then use this technique to be able to bring those 3-word action outcomes to life for you. And they also make for really great digital marketing words and phrases that you can then, okay, clarify from consistency, and that would mean, and then you can write out the last little bit. So the image can be clarified from consistency and then give the idea. I think you can see how the pattern would unfold for you. Again, this is something you can put up on your wall and play with and see where you end up. All right, so that's the 9 squares that might be related to a key word. You can put up your word for the world there as well, if that is what is important to you. I just happened to pull out the word trust so that I could show you a different example. So that was example number 2. And what we're going to do is move into example number 3. So here we go into the 3rd example of how to use the 9 squares. So I'm going to link it back to your word for the world. In this case, I'm going to use magnificence, which is my word. And what I'm going to do is that I might just leave up the word clarify, contribute, communicate. It doesn't matter. You just pick 3 words. So what I'm doing now is I'm just putting up the different words that have been brought out through the other 2 examples, and I've just put them up in a random way up on the board. And therefore, you might go, all right, is there a storyline here that might go clarify hope and trust, contribute collaboration and patience, to communicate flexibility and faith? Again, you can use it to generate even new ideas. And again, you can flip out your action verb here because it will actually give you more ideas. And then what you then do is say, okay, what would happen if clarify because of trust, contribute from because of patience, communicate because of faith. Again, you can start to see how to create action outcome, these wise practices, inspired standards ideas for yourself that might help you with your writing. And one of the ways in which you can do this is think about what might be 9 key words that you use, get your because of, from, and for, and use different combinations and see if they stimulate your writing of ideas. And grandparents is that you can say, okay, what are some of the action verbs I'm going to take and use nature-based words here. Again, lots and lots of ways to stimulate your ideas about what you can do to move forward, in this case, in being for the world. A fourth way of playing with this 9 squares, again, let me just link it back to my word for the world. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place on my 9 squares action verbs only. And what I can also do is I'm pulling from some of the statements I've had before, but I can also write, if I want, into the boxes and create new cards. So I might put describe, I might put manage, I might put complete. And what happens is that I can start playing with other action verbs to see what's really important. I might go, if I'm going to clarify something, then I want to hope that I can build out the trust so that I can trust what I'm doing. I can grace the table so that I can describe what has the greatest meaning for me in the traditions of Thanksgiving, so that I find a way in which I'm going to contribute in a family ritual. Again, you can start to play with this and move the cards around and play with it here, play with it here, weave down through it. Again, lots and lots of ways in which you can do it. Another way in which to play with this 9 squares, and again, I'll leave it with magnificence, my word for the world, is that you take the outcome related words, the noun versions. We played with the verbs in the last example. Now we're going to just play with the nouns. And therefore, what is it that you want to have as outcomes? You know, collaboration is an outcome, flexibility, truth. And therefore, you can take cards or write into these boxes outcome words, nouns, and then do the same kind of playing around with it to see what kind of stories unfold, what ideas come to mind, how you might use this to write your legacy story. Again, what you're doing is you're really playing with the outcomes that are important as they link up to magnificence. And what you can do at this point is that you can use your camera on your computer or get a camera that you have available to you, and that as you start to share about what's here, you can actually film yourself and record yourself. So if I'm looking at magnificence about being my word for the world, I might go the importance of flexibility, is that there's times when I have to go with the flow and to be able to maneuver. If I'm going to use a river example, is to maneuver myself away from strainers and sweepers, either trees that might catch you as you're floating or canoeing or just moving down the river. And if I understand the flow of the flexibility, then stay within my truth. And then that way I don't have to keep thinking about what stories I'm sharing. If I'm sharing stories of truth, I can just stay in this flow and being flexible about dealing with what unfolds for me. And then if I'm consistently thinking about being discreet, and if someone gives me insights, I'm just going to keep it for myself. So as I'm in this flow and staying with the truth of what's happening for me, and I demonstrate this notion of discretion, then it's a really great way in which to think about, feel about my magnificence, and how I'm living my extraordinary life, how I'm co-creating a well-living community, how I'm evolving my legacy. Again, you can play with this, and just as I've recorded it here, you could do the same thing. And that's just another way to use the 9 squares. And I'm just going to go over one last one with you, and just to give you a bit of a fun time with words that are available to you. The last example I want to share with you, and again, there's lots of other ways in which to play with this, because you can even use visual language and put it up here, and I'll shoot a video about that another time. But this is the one where we use our from and for and because of, and maybe you want to add something like a therefore. And what you can then do is say, okay, what we're going to do is put it in relation to trust as it applies to magnificence. And then all the other words that you have, all the other cards that you have, you can put them up in different kind of combinations, or you might come up with a completely new word that you want to work with. And you might say, okay, you might say, okay, let's work with caring. And so this notion of caring from trust, caring for trust, right? Caring from trust because of whatever this word might be. And again, you can play with different combinations to see what it sparks for you. This one in particular, because I'm using language that is bridging verbs and nouns. And what becomes even more fun is, of all these different examples that I've given to you, you'd say, okay, for the month of, we're going to choose these words. And what we're going to do, grandkids, is we're going to figure out what statements that we're going to create for ourselves, and where possible, we'll put them into action in our involvement with nature. Why not? It's a way in which to bring them closer to the natural world. You can also do it about the kinship and the family and friends, and how might it be a way in which to help them do that as well. As I draw this video to a close, just remember that you can subscribe, ring the bell, comment, like, and share somewhere around the video, that we can continue our learning together. And I so enjoy learning with you. And as a point of reference, this 9 squares linked to this one word is sort of like 9 plus 1. And I think of it as my 9 plus 1 squares. And what it does is it allows me to generate all of these different kinds of ideas. And you notice now is how it looks like it has been used. And that's what I'm encouraging. And whatever way in which you do it, you can get a whiteboard like this and smaller cards. You can get butcher paper. You can get flip chart paper and put it up and play and play and play and play with what's going on, because play is a form of learning. Learning gets you to a point of what it is you want to educate. And when you deepen and enrich your learning and your educating, then your life from a points of living and working is so much more enriched. And I would just so encourage you to use a tool like this. And if you have a variation on that, please share, okay? Because again, it's a way for us to learn together in how we're going to be interacting with others, how as another grandparent working with the grandchildren, playing with the grandchildren, living with the grandchildren, we can help each other. As I've mentioned on some of my videos, I'm not going to be a grandparent. I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to be an actual grandparent. So I consider myself an adjunct grandparent. And therefore, ideas like this, I'm just bringing to the surface, bringing so that you have an opportunity to play. So with that, enjoy what unfolds for you.